Hello, this is John Majori with Majori on Bowie, and this is the Majori on Bowie YouTube channel, where I have a new interview every week that has something to do with David Bowie. And for daily content, visit the blog www.majorionbowie.com, where I have updated content every single day that almost always has something to do with David Bowie. Today, I'm incredibly honored to have a very, very special guest, a true legend of rock and roll, Tony Newman. Tony, I invited on the show because he played drums on one of my all-time favorite albums, Diamond Dogs, and he played on the accompanying tour, which also means that he played on the David Live album. But Tony's career is far more expansive than that. It would be easier to list the rock and roll stars that he hasn't played with, rather than the entire list that he has played with. But it includes T-Rex, The Who, Donovan, Jeff Beck, Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard. The list goes on and on and on. And it would take me an entire show to list everybody that Tony has played with. It's really incredible. So Tony has not only made very significant contributions to the genre of rock music, but he's also been a witness. He even played for a band that opened for the Beatles. And I'm going to ask him about that after we talk a little bit about David Bowie. Depending on where you place the marker, rock and roll has only existed for about 70 years. So Tony has been a significant part of the whole history of rock and roll. And for that reason, I'm so honored that you agreed to join me today. Tony, welcome and thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here, John.
So let's get right into this. Is a Bowie show, so let's get right into talking about Bowie and your involvement with Diamond Dogs. How you had not been playing with Bowie up to that point. How did he recruit you to play on the album?
Well, it was a strange time actually. I was working with the Who. I was honoured to be working with all these major acts, and I was cutting some tracks with them for Tommy, the movie. So I got a call from a friend of mine, Herbie Flowers, the bass player. He said, "You got to come over here." He said, "We need your influence. We need you to come play drums over here. It's for David Bowie. We're really having problems at the moment." So I was quite surprised, and so I went over there about 7 o'clock at night and set up and got playing, and David was awfully nice. He was. I don't even remember formally being introduced to him. It was just, "Hi, David. Hi, Tony. Hey, glad you're here." And I'd seen David for years before. I remember when it was David Jones, and he had a presence then. He was a very, very intelligent, clever guy. He really was. He was a brilliant person. He's so intuitive and inventive. It was quite amazing what he does. And since I've been gone, I look back on all that stuff and I thought, how on earth did he walk out in public with like a triangular dress on? I mean, like a large geisha girl or so. It was fantastic what he did, and he did it because that's where he was. He put it on because that's what he felt right to him that day, in the mood he was in, or what he was trying to create. Very inventive guy, four octave range in vocals. It was. I went to a Bowie show here in Las Vegas, and they were honouring him, and they had the full band together, and I was there, and so I got to meet a lot of the guys. But Space Oddity, they had to have two singers to sing it. Not one person could do the whole range.
Right.
So,
wow.
I mean, I'm constantly reminded of what a great musician he was. It's great to see him. And I'll just say this. When I went in for the second day with David, and I remember we cut Sweet Thing, and I asked him what he wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And he said, "I want you to be a teenage French drummer watching your first guillotining."
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that, and I was gonna say, don't tell Woody Woodmansey, but that drum piece is my very favorite drum moment in any David Bowie song.
Oh,
And you talk to a lot of Bowie fans, and the Sweet Thing Candidate, Sweet Thing Sweet, is either their favorite song or one of their favorite songs. And that, how, like, he gives you that type of instruction. How does that translate into your mind? Like, what does that even mean?
well, I guess there would be an element of great tension there. It
Yeah,
wouldn't be a relaxed groove. It would be fairly solemn drum beat. It would be like a military drum beat. Like I should imagine there'd be like a four-stroke rough,
yeah,
vroom, vroom, very slow. With rock and roll, you think you're going to be cutting grooves and making it exciting, but this was a performance.
yeah,
So I thought of the early rudiments and where I'd be if I actually was a military drummer.
yeah,
And that's how, that tension and fear. I'm quite good at imagining things. So, that developed quite nicely on the the David Live album.
yeah,
Yeah, you can see in that how it developed from Diamond Dogs, the record, to David Live, how we'd moved the beat around a bit, but we hadn't detracted from the song, but we'd moved the beat around a bit, and it developed into something that was pretty cool.
yeah. So that's interesting. Let me ask you this: do you read music?
Yeah.
Okay, so were you given a part to read first before you're getting these verbal instructions?
No, 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 no. This was all ad lib. We went in. It was very empty in the studio. Really, there was Herbie Flowers on bass, me on drums. I think maybe Mike Garson was there. I'm not quite sure. I don't remember him being there, but he was always lurking around. He was always around. And David, and that was about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was empty. So there was a tension in that being empty. You know,
So yeah. So you're playing together. You're not recording your piece separately.
no, 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 no parts. We were, you know, I could do custom sessions where you go in and there'll be a chart and you'd play a jingle or something, and some rock acts might have a chart,
Yeah.
but mostly you go. I went in and just did my thing. This is what it is. What do you think we can do? And
Mhm.
try and make it interesting. Try to make it a little bit different without distraction from the song.
Yeah. So Diamond Dogs is a concept album. Did Bowie explain the idea behind the album, or are you really taking it song by song?
Yeah, he probably did
Yeah.
sort of explain what the concept was, but there's when you're in there, you're sort of trying to develop a manner of playing, and so you take that in, but you wouldn't necessarily repeat the feelings on the recording. You'd be
Yeah.
aware of what it was all about.
Yeah. You played on all of the songs I think that had some connection to 1984.
Yeah,
And you played on most of the album entirely, but it's not some of your earlier work is very upbeat, it's very happy. Not this album, right? It's very dark, it's very gloomy. um
yeah.
yeah. So like, how do you get in the mindset?
Well, you were David had set it up, so we were really, as I think back on it, David was on a pedestal in front of me, and then Herbie was round the back somewhere, and Garson was probably on the right. But it was very quiet, very quiet. So there wasn't a lot of musicians around, so you had to sort of focus into what we were playing here, which
Hmm.
was solemn.
Yeah.
Solemn. It brings a feeling of like emptiness in me, as I talk about it now.
Yeah. So speaking of emptiness, the concert, well, so you then uh, I'll come back to emptiness. the
Okay.
so Bowie was very happy with your playing. He invites you to go on the tour with him.
Yeah, yeah. The second or third day I was in the studio, he said, "Would you like to come and tour with us in America.
Yeah.
And I I didn't find till a lot later, why he would have chosen me to come on this tour, and the reason was that he'd seen me play with Little Richard, and he was a big fan of Little Richard.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. And so I played with Richard. So actually, some of the grooves, that are on David Live are a sort of rock steady. They're hard. They're hard beats. We're not messing around here. We're going to rock and roll, and that's
Yeah.
how it was. That's how it was. So I understood where he was coming from.
Yeah. I was going to ask about Little Richard and the Who are two shaping influences on Bowie, and you played with those guys.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Uh,
Well,
Go ahead.
what did you want me to say? Do you want me to tell you about Richard?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to the Who.
Oh, the Who? I'll talk about the
Let's
Who.
do Little Richard first.
Okay. Yeah, I was with a band called Sounds Incorporated, and we were managed by John Arden, and he brought Richard over to England to do a concert tour. But Richard wasn't doing rock and roll at the time. Richard was gospel.
Uh-huh.
So we had all of these charts come in from Quincy Jones,
Yeah.
like Joy, Joy, Joy in My Heart, and great charts and, swinging stuff. And so we go to the rehearsal, and Billy Preston's there, and he messes with the Hammond organ, takes the cover of the volume control out and switches the volume out to max, which makes that organ scream. So Richard comes in, and Billy's was playing piano at the moment. Richard's got very short hair, and within about 10 minutes, he'd done one like gospel tune, and then he said to Billy, he said, hey, Billy, just slip over with you. I'm going to sit down. And he went into like Good Golly Miss Molly. And that was the end of the gospel tour, right there and then. So, it was fantastic. The first night we did the show, and we're riffing from America, Little Richard, we're riffing, and we don't see him. And then all of a sudden, up in the balcony, there's this black caped figure screaming, I am the atom bomb, I am the atom bomb. And jumps off the balcony and runs onto the stage. And it just went berserk for an hour. I mean,
Yeah.
it got wild. In the last song, I can't remember what it was, he was in the piano humping it. The police were called with police dogs. The end was getting wrecked. And, all I could think of was this is rock and roll. This is the real deal, We're all
Yeah.
rebelling. We're just expressing ourselves.
So I think Bowie has said it himself that there wouldn't have been a David Bowie without a Little Richard.
Probably not. Probably
Yeah.
not. I mean, David was sort of searching. I'd see him going around, doing David, what was his name before David Bowie? David
Jones.
Yeah. He was going around and, with a band and that, and he hadn't found out where he was yet.
Yeah.
But he did. He did. The thing about the Diamond Dogs tour was that the critics said David had put together a hand-picked musicians. So each one of us was part of this musical jigsaw puzzle, So
Yeah.
he was very specific about what he wanted in that show.
Yeah.
So it was a great band. I mean, he later said that the stuff we cut with that band was the most progressive he ever played.
Yeah.
I mean, all the guys could really do it, and they were really good players, all of them.
So that's you had Mike Garson, you had Earl Slick, you had Herbie Flowers,
David Sanborn,
David Sanborn.
Richie Grando on baritone,
Yeah.
Pablo Rosario on percussion. It
Yeah.
was great. And I've looked up those guys. I mean, Sanborn did really well, for years. But I don't know what happened to Richie, or I tried to find I've just tried to find them just to have a chat, see how they were, and I never saw any of them again, ever,
Yeah.
never, anywhere I went, you know. So we just came in New York for that period. It was a happening, man.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's a legendary tour, and the part of the legend is that there no concert. The concert was captured as a record, but there's no video footage of the entirety of a concert from that
I
tour.
know,
Yeah,
I know. Very strange that, isn't it? It was, you know, I think that David was having trouble with the management company. I got that vibe.
main.
Yeah, and perhaps that put some tension. And David didn't want to invest any more of his talents with this agency.
Yeah.
So maybe he deliberately omitted filming any of that. It is
Mhm.
quite surprising that there is nothing that I've ever seen or anybody sent me about that concert. And it was spectacular. You
Yeah.
know, we had like trucks full of special effects, and you know, it was really something else.
So that I was going to ask you about that because if you think about modern concerts today, they're very theatrical. But at that time in 1974, was anybody else? Well, why don't you say a little bit about what was the set like, and did anybody was anybody else at the time doing anything like that?
Not that I knew of. No, no. Uh, yeah, somehow when I you know got working on and went out and we rehearsed the show and we went on the road, it was sort of familiar. It sort of they I think we had three semis and they'd have to go in the day before, you
Yeah.
know, and set it up. So there was a big hand with a like a spaceship on the end that came out and he would sit, you know, it would sing Space Oddity and you know and what else was there? We were on. We were all we all had a costume to wear. That was it, and they'd given me this shirt that I looked like a drayman. You know, that's a big. He saw the dresser saw me as a drayman, someone who delivered beer. You know, and so you know you put it on every night, and we all had our identities. I guess I used to drink enough anyway, but yeah, the set. I can only remember the arm that went on. There was they had dancers and singers, so
Yeah.
they dance a lot. They do Guy, Alexandra, and nice guys. So they were friends with David. So it was like taking a New York theatre play on the road. That was the idea.
Yeah. Now the impression I get was that he was somewhat fragile at that time. Um, was he very professional to work with, or did he seem like he was on the edge?
Well, you know, it was an on edge time through the cocaine. You know,
Yeah.
doing all this blow and everything, that brings attention to everything. And that was when Time magazine said it's not addictive, it's a recreational drug, you know, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah. They got that wrong.
Oh, didn't they ever? Didn't they? Yeah, so that's how it was. We had a stage manager, Nick, who was actually from a New York production company. And he'd give you 10 minutes, 5 minutes, you know, come and make sure you're on stage and in positions, please. And, you know, then we'd start.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Um, so uh, from that concert, the album David Live, which for years was the only official live album that David Bowie had released.
Yes.
So that was recorded. Is it true you almost didn't get paid for that?
Yeah, there was a big riot going on. Herbie Flowers had got a petition uh, to pay all the same. Everyone should get the same amount of money. And David said, "I'm not doing that." He said, "I'll pay you and Herbie. You know, you pay us what we wanted." But Herbie wouldn't have it, and so he called a strike.
Yeah.
So we went. Herbie and I went into the dressing room with David, and Herbie was saying to David about, you got to pay us. We're not taking a daily rate for doing 2 days recording. And David went berserk. He picked a chair up and smashed it on the ground, smashed it into the ceiling, and I left. I just left. I can't say we're going on stage in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So he agreed, and all the guys got money, and yeah, that was good. But he was saying, "Look, I don't give a shit whether you play or not. I'm not paying this money, and I'll go on with the guitar and do the show." Okay, well, that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. Herbie told me later, he'd worked with David. He said that David agreed that he was right. That Herbie was
Yeah.
right. We were right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. Well, so when you're doing this, when you're working on a tour that would turn out to be legendary and the album Diamond Dogs, do you have any sense at all that people would still be listening to this 50 years later?
No, no. I cut a lot of stuff. I cut a lot of tracks with a lot of bands, and I really was just a super. I mean, a journeyman drummer, really.
Yeah.
I think I'm a star, but I'm a journeyman drummer, and sort of I had the lifestyle of a star and not the money. So it got my ego got to me, and yeah, I don't. I only hear from people that text me or talk to me how important these albums were. They'll play a couple of them I played on. The music. A friend of mine who's a drummer, Alan Charles, he
Yeah.
was he was saying that it was the most important era of music in the pop music anyway, I would think, because we went from big band to rhythm and blues and boogie woogie in the 50s, and then the big backbeat came in, and you got Richard and Bill Haley and Fats Domino and Jerry Lee
Yeah.
Lewis, and they were all smacking the shit out of it. It was great.
So I'm going to come back to that. I want to ask one last question about Diamond Dogs, which is,
Yes.
Over the last 50 years, how many times you walk into a place and you hear Rebel Rebel and you just smile?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's on everywhere,
Yeah.
You hear it everywhere. And I think I did some, Ainsley Dunbar had done some of those tracks,
Yeah.
and I don't know what went on. I have no idea. Ainsley's a great drummer. I can't imagine, anyway, it doesn't matter. But I came in and I was quite surprised that he wasn't doing it still.
Yeah.
But so they wanted most of it overdubbed, I think. So I did some overdubs on things, on everything, I think. So, when you're working as much, it's like a dream. You're doing these albums and you're creating, and you move on to the next project or the next session.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. My son called me from England. And he said to me, You've got to listen to David live." He said they've remixed it and it's absolutely fantastic. And I did.
Yeah.
They had remixed it and it sounded really good. I mean,
Yeah.
what happened there was that in the liner notes, David said that they'd had to overdub certain things. They'd had to do because the guitar and drums were bleeding into the vocal mics, and so they did. They had to overdub the guitars, I think, and the saxophones and the voices. He said the only thing we didn't touch were the drums. They were perfect both nights.
Yeah.
I,
Wow.
I was really thrilled about that.
I just want to tell you, my wife grew up in a bar. Like her family ran a bar. And
Ah,
she said that this was one of the few albums that they kept on the jukebox for the whole time.
is that
They
right?
usually they trade out albums every month or however long, but they
Yeah.
kept David live on, and that's the one. It's the one Bowie album and one of the few albums that they just kept.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I said earlier, David said he thought it was the most progressive music he'd done.
Yeah.
And, it was funny because when I was with the Jeff Beck group, uh, they re-recorded, remixed um, Beckola, which I played
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And Jeff said, I'd have wished I'd kept that excitement together, because he fired us all and went on to Beck Bogart and a piece. So both those artists realised that we had some stuff going on. We had some mojo going on there,
Yeah.
you know.
So you, I want to come back to well, there's so much, but let me ask you this. So you started playing in the early 60s?
But yeah, I would turn professional in 1960.
1960. So
60.
you could have gone in different directions. You've played on country albums, you played on gospel albums, you could have done jazz. Why? What appealed to you about rock and roll? And I'm asking this in part because this is when the whole country, the whole world suddenly turned on to rock and roll. Why?
Well, in England, I came from a really dysfunctional family, and my plan was to get out of that joint as quickly as I could.
Yeah.
And then rock and roll came along, and I remember being at a carnival, a fair, and riding a ride like the whip, it was very fast, and they put Lucille on, Little Richard, and
Yeah.
it just about sent me insane. I mean, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to play rock drums. That's just fantastic, because
Yeah.
it shiver up my spine, you know.
Yeah.
And so by the time I was 13, I got a paper round and I bought myself a drum kit. And so I had no idea how to play drums. I'd go to the clubs at the weekend in London and watch the jazz drummers, and I had no idea what they did. So I played drums my way, just single strokes and triples maybe. And here I am, a professional musician with Sounds Incorporated. We were working with Gene Vincent the first gig, and I could play it all. Everybody liked what I did.
Yeah.
And then, like 5 years later, I thought I better get a book on how to play drums. That's what.
So Sounds Incorporated opened for the Beatles.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So tell us about that. What you're witnessing this period where it's become history, has become legend, and you're there, you're opening for them.
Yeah. Well, we'd been working with them in England, and we'd met in Hamburg. They were playing the Star Club,
Yeah.
and we were there, and we became friends, and which was real nice. And they're great guys, and so we got signed on by Brian Epstein as a band to do our own 15, 20 minutes and open for the Beatles, because we were so different, saxophones, and I don't know where our heads were those days. We were playing rock and roll with rock and roll acts and playing all this syrupy damn music. I didn't understand it. But anyway, I'm doing a gig, man. I'm rocking and roll. This is what I do for a living. So we went on tour with them in America, and we opened for them, and Shea Stadium had 4 colossal Voice of America speakers. They're
Yeah.
like 8 foot by 8 foot, but you couldn't hear a thing, nothing. When you went out with the Beatles, the screaming never stopped, never stopped. It seemed. I mean, we'd come out of the dressing room and they'd all be screaming, even for us. I don't know what what was going on. So we did our set, and we came off, and the place is going nuts. And the bass player looked at me and he said, I don't know whether they're screaming and yelling because they really liked us, or they're screaming and yelling because the Beatles are up next.
Yeah.
So that's how it was. Yeah.
Well, we chatted for a few minutes before I started recording, and you could find anything on YouTube now. So
Yeah.
I was listening to some Sounds Incorporated, and you can't. It's infectious. I mean, you can't not like it. You can't not like want to get up and dance. And
Oh,
the picture behind me. There's a great. I will have posted this on my blog so people could see it. Great video where you seem like you want to jump out of the drum kit and just start dancing.
oh, that's great. I want to see what tune is that, I wonder.
It's the William Tell Overture.
Oh, okay. God,
Yeah.
yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
real. It's actually a great video because it's not just somebody fixed a camera. It seems like it's directed and filmed as a promo, but it's very energetic. It's really great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're not. And here's the other thing about you're the central figure. You're surrounded by horn players and other musicians, but you're right in the middle, and it's not like the drums are incidental to the sound. It's really key.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I became a hot drummer there for a while. I didn't record. Let me say this: it took me a while to learn how to record music other than with Sounds Incorporated, because Sounds Incorporated, I'd be pushing it and driving it, and you don't need to do that on sessions. You need to sit back on the beat and play the song, you know.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to do that, and it stayed with me all my life, really, because like when I went to Nashville, they're saying, "Can't we slow this track down?" Because I'm trying to get it happening, you
Yeah.
know, and it ain't gonna happen in the way I want. You know,
Yeah.
they want to sing this song, and you know, I want it to rock, and it's not gonna. So you
Yeah.
just sit and play, keep it in time, keep it as nice as you can. You know.
Yeah. Well, so um, you're in Nashville, but then fast forward to right before you do Diamond Dogs. You mentioned that you were doing work with the Who, and
Yes.
how why did they need another drummer? They had Keith Moon.
Well, at the time, Keith was very sick. I don't know what was the matter, but he was very sick. So they called several drummers in to play, and I was one of them. And like the wall at the studio was Remy Martin from the wall to the ceiling, you know. And they said you'll get paid cash and a royalty rate, or a royalty rate and more cash. You know, it was beautiful. They just said that up front. You know, don't worry about it. It's all okay. So I go in there and we cut Pinball Widders, and it was absolutely incredible. It was one of the thrills of my life, because we're facing the control room and we're playing. Townsend's rocking and rolling, swinging his arms around, and we knocked the shit out of it. It was wonderful, and the whole booth is jumping up and down. I mean, it was a great thrill to get it rocking, you know.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, I did some tracks with them, and I was pretty wild at the time. I was drinking and doing a lot of drugs at the time, and they really liked me. Pete talks about me in Rolling Stone, but the main problem was, I'd play the shows and the gigs and everything, and then I'd go and get wrecked, and it was a wreck things, and that was the trouble. I didn't want another Keith Moon.
So I just
That,
want to pause here and say that the band that had Keith Moon thought that you were too wild.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't want another Keith Moon,
Yeah. All right.
or his peer, his teacher.
Yeah. I've heard you tell a story about Keith Richards,
Oh
and
yeah,
I don't want to get too far ahead, but why don't you say the last time you saw Keith Richards, what he said?
yeah. I know who you are, and what the fuck are you doing here? I've heard all about you, and yeah, that was Keith. Keith, I saw Woody there. It was great. I love Keith. See, I love Keith. He's the last great rock and roller to me. I
Yeah.
love his attitude, and yeah, he's a great guy. Great
I
guy.
you know I saw them. I saw the Rolling Stones last year, and
Oh,
in Boston, and
yeah,
they were terrific.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. Who have they got on drums?
Oh, I don't remember his name. I apologize.
Yeah, Lewis Jordan, was it?
I don't know.
I don't know. They got a bass player and a drummer, and of course, there's just really Keith, Mick, and Ronnie there now. They're the
Right.
front piece,
Yeah.
because Charlie he was wonderful. I love Charlie.
Yeah. I don't mean to talk about the Rolling Stones, but I've seen them, several times over the last, 30 years. They don't sound any different.
No, that's what they
Yeah.
do. I mean, what are they going to do if they come off the road? They go out of their mind.
Right.
I know what that's like. You can't, all that energy and uh, all that attention.
Yeah.
You say, I don't want it, and then you don't get it, and you go nuts, you know.
So you're retired now. What do you do with that energy?
You know, that's strange you should ask because I sometimes get a practice pad out and practice,
Yeah.
but I can't go through the mechanics of actually playing and doing shows anymore. You know, this was given to me. This was a gift that was given to me about when I was 13. I don't know why. I'm a kid from nowhere. I don't know anything. And I start playing drums and I have a very successful career for 50 years. And then all of a sudden it's switched off. You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's gone. And people say, "Oh, you can't stop playing," and yet they're not offering me any work. I say, if you've got a tour, I'll with whoever it is, give me a shout and we'll talk about it. But for me, Tony Newman can't go out and play drums as the Tony Newman is now. I've got to
Yeah.
get in shape,
Yeah.
good shape. And the level of the technicality of the drums these days is absolutely phenomenal. You know, you've got these almost babies, 5, 6 years old, playing drums. These Japanese girls and American girls and Eastern European girls that are playing phenomenal drums. And
Yeah.
they're playing one-hand rolls, and the kick drums at ridiculous speed. You've got
Yeah.
people doing the whole track, including the very fast rolls, with one hand. You know, so it's a different world out there. It really is. But I miss it, of course. But you got to sort of be in reality. You know, I
Yeah.
got to be real. Eric Clapton said recently that he was getting really worn out with all the road work because it's so tiring. Different time changes, different places, different hotels, and it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. There
Yeah.
you are. You know,
Yeah.
you're in a five-star hotel. You open the door, and there you are. You
Right.
know, it's there. You go.
Yeah.
So
And
some people as drummers with name bands and that of my age are playing really well, but they've had a continuity that I didn't have. Mine was like it slipped away, just like it came in, it just slipped away.
yeah.
And yeah.
I don't I'm not a musician myself, but it seems like the drummer is the person expending the most energy on the stage.
Yeah, I mean, you're the timekeeper,
Yeah.
you're the beat, you're the heartbeat of rock and roll. So you've got to be able to play at a certain level so that you can move the beat back and forward slightly to put emotion in what's going on.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to kill people with the where you put the beat.
Yeah.
It comes back so far, it takes your breath away. Well, it does that to the crowd too. And
Right.
so, like, you can see when the band's really rocking. You're solid as a rock, and you don't need to move it. That's
Yeah.
the thing. You just keep the beat because it's fantastic. It is, and you don't need to make it any better. It's perfect. And
Yeah.
so you don't play there. You don't put fills. So I made that mistake many times in my life where it's really rocking, and then think, well, I'll get it going even more reckless, or whatever. And I'd put a fill in, and I wish I hadn't. It sort of dented the groove.
Yeah. Well, so there's one other person I want to ask you about, and then I've got a few other questions. But Mark Bolan, and you
Mm.
were the drummer for T Rex for a few years, and you worked closely with Mark Bolan on the last album,
Yes,
and you were on his show, Mark.
yes.
How was he to work with? He had a complicated relationship with David Bowie.
Yeah, yeah. David came to the show. They did a duet together.
Were you playing on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. We'd go up once a week to this, up to Manchester to do this day. What was it called? Mark, the
Mark.
TV show. Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, we'd have new acts on there, and David came on the last show, which you've got to see. It's fantastic. We'd stop drinking for a week, because we thought we'd just go on a wagon and see what happens, except for except for that last show where the water fountain had now become a champagne fountain. So pissed as arseholes, Mark's completely out of it. And they're singing this duet, and Mark falls off the stage. It's just ridiculous. You've got to see it. It's just fantastic. But Mark, I loved him. He was great. He had the most charisma of any musician or artist I've ever seen. And he didn't have it. For me, his voice was ridiculous. It was like he barred, it was, but on stage, he was absolutely phenomenal. He's like Elvis Presley in Europe. They absolutely love him there. There's fan clubs and things. Him and I got on really well. We really did. And heartbreaking when he died. And, we were voted the best new band, and he made a comeback in his career.
Yeah.
We're riding the wave again. This is going to be great. Everywhere's sold out.
Yeah.
There's punk rock bands opening for us. I loved his manager and the road crew, and it was really good. It was a good thing happening. And then, of course, if the singer dies or something, that's it. I mean, that's the end of it.
Yeah.
So, a very, very inventive guy. Him and Bowie got signed by the same publishing company, but they weren't. They thought they'd be writing all day, and they weren't. They were painting the offices. So that was their beginning. Yeah,
I did not know
yeah,
that. Imagine having your office painted by Mark Bolan and David Bowie.
exactly. What a trip, eh? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it was tragic that he died in a car accident. And that album behind me, where you played on Dandy in the Underworld, that was really a kind of a comeback album.
Yes, it was. Yes, it
Yeah.
was. He
So we
was
could only.
living. He was living with Gloria at the time. Gloria was his girlfriend,
Uh-huh.
and she was American, black American, and she'd come to the sessions, and she was like a moderator of the groove.
Yeah.
She was always come up to you and tell you like how much she liked it or whatever, and
Yeah.
so I liked her a lot. And the car just hadn't been serviced properly, so it went off the road, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tragic, especially since how much. I mean, you knew the man personally. I, of course, didn't, but I could only imagine what kind of music he would have made over the next several decades.
Yeah, yeah, we were moving up. It
Yeah.
was going to start to move up and have jams, and yeah, it was going to be good. It
Yeah.
really was. And then it wasn't, like he said in one of his lyrics, "Oh, too beautiful to live, too beautiful to die." That was one of it. That's it.
Yeah, it's crazy. You look back at the time, especially now we're talking about the 70s, and it seems like so much happened in that decade. We were talking about T-Rex. The beginning of the decade, they're the biggest thing in the world, and then in the middle of the decade, they kind of fell off, and we're talking
Yeah.
about their comeback. But from the perspective of 50 years later, does it all seem like it was the blink of an eye?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I was like 20 yesterday, it's just ridiculous. Decades go by in fractions of seconds, it seems.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, I mean, I'll be 80. I am 82.
Yeah.
82. I mean, if you'd have lived a life like I lived, you wouldn't figure he's making it to 22. But here I am. I'm still here.
Well, I hope to make it to 82. I'm a few years younger than you.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
You're a young man. But, yeah.
so I just have a couple more questions I want to ask you. And I can't thank you enough.
Oh.
Um, so the week before I post this interview, I'm going to post on the blog. I have a blog, links to different songs that you played on. What would you say are some of the songs or works that you played on that you're proudest of, that are some of your most representative pieces of work?
Yeah. Wow. Well, Beckola's a good example. That is, what I've found with me uh, is I'm more of an artist. I don't say this egotistically, but I find that I played much better going with an artist and playing it all fresh rather than a custom session where you go in and you play the charts. You know, I like the spontaneity of the moment where it never happened. You know, you just don't know what's going to happen or where we're going to put it.
Yeah.
And you know that's it. I mean, I think every album I ever played on was there's something on there that's pretty cool. You know,
Yeah.
but I played on so many albums, it's ridiculous. I don't remember. Now Herbie Flowers, you could go to a jukebox and half the bloody jukebox was stuff he'd played on. It was ridiculous. He was a session man, see, a real
Yeah.
session man. He'd do Lou Rawls and Lou Reed and ABBA, and oh my lord, he did so many sessions. I did some with him. We did jingles and that together. But as I say, I was better off. I was more comfortable playing with a band, you know, or a rock
Yeah.
and roller. Yeah.
Yeah. So I usually close my interviews by asking the same question of everybody, and I'm going to
Oh,
ask you, but then
yes.
I've got one other thing I want to say.
Oh,
So
okay. Just one other thing.
yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
going to ask you a question. I'm going to say one other thing. So my question is this, and I asked the same question. What's your favorite Bowie song and album?
David Live
Yeah.
and Aladdin Sane.
Yeah.
I love Aladdin Sane. Garson's piano is just phenomenal. And we're tight, the band, and Pablo's plays the nice percussion. And I mean, that we got that thing going. Compared with the recorded track, the live one is dynamite. I love that. Great playing.
I will say this because when David Bowie was alive, he did not authorize many live albums. David Live was one of them. And since he died, there's been a proliferation of live albums.
Oh.
Yeah. But which is great for somebody like me who's a big fan. But the only thing is that it dilutes attention from the ones that he authorized. And so I'm not saying this to you, I'm saying this to anybody watching it. If you've never heard David live, go out and get it. It really is a great live album.
Oh, it's fantastic. Even though I play on it,
Yeah.
it's a great album. It really is.
So
Yeah.
so Tony Newman, here's what I wanted to say.
Yes.
You tell great stories, and I feel like I could talk to you for a long time. And you've witnessed history, you've been part of history, you've been a contributor to it. You have to write a book.
Oh, yeah.
Get a collaborator. If you're not comfortable writing, get a collaborator. If you want me to help, I offer you my assistance.
Yeah.
Whatever. But you have to get these stories down on paper. It's like your obligation.
Yeah, I know. I've been doing this for about 25 years, and I've got books everywhere scribbling it. And my son says I've got a lot of the paperwork I sent up to my son, who's going to use AI on it.
Yeah.
So we'll see how this works.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Tony Newman, I'm so thankful for you coming on the show today. This has really been a joy. I've enjoyed your work, and I can't tell you what an honor it's been to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been delightful. We'll talk again.
Please, please.
Yes.
The pleasure be mine. Let's keep in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. God bless. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.